Coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studio, this is Talking Politics. And I am the generational talent in Garden State Media because, ladies and gentlemen, as the establishment media here continues to lie to you every single day, guess who won't? That's right, me, Fernando Uribe, the hero you need right now in New Jersey journalism. And folks, again, happy June to all of you. Hope you had a wonderful Father's Day weekend. I was certainly blessed to with my dad and uncle, and of course all the great dads that I know in the community. Again, thank you for everything that you do for all of us each and every day. Of course, there's a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Folks, over the weekend, certainly, I'm sure that unless you were living under a rock, we got to witness incessant children all over New Jersey and even throughout the country participate in what was known as No King's Day, which was interesting because, again, unless you ever utilize Google as a search engine or maybe read books, you would know that June the 14th would commemorate the 250th birthday of the United States Army. Certainly in the battles that were won against the British to declare ourselves independent from the monarchy of King George, and of course the battles since then. And also June 14th happens to be Flag Day in the United States, which we honor the red, white, and blue. And coincidentally, yes, to no fault of anyone, obviously, it happens to be the 47th president's actual birthday. But don't tell that to all the social justice clowns and woke fools and the Karens and cat ladies and other smelly feminists. No, somehow they were under the impression that, yes, we're having a military parade to honor the king. And no, folks, again, all it takes is some basic reading, is that going back to June of 2024, the Department of Defense was already organizing this year's military parade to once again honor the 250th birthday of the United States Army. And coincidentally, in June of 2024, who was president, by the way? Oh, that's right. Yes, Sleepyhead, the guy who, I guess, had an auto pen or, allowed the country to be run by committee, as we've come to learn, obviously, from books and testimonials and everything. So before everybody starts ejaculating, having a party in their pants about, oh my goodness, how terrible it is to have a military parade. Just as a reminder, folks, it takes place in France every year, in South Korea and Italy, and other democratic nations around the world. Now, as I said before, it just happened to coincide with the president's birthday, but don't let a good crisis go to waste, as former, Obama administration chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel used to say. Hey, you can never let a good crisis go to waste. And of course, why not give some fodder and ammunition to, once again, all the woke fools and the Karens and the feminists and the cat ladies to go out there and, obviously walk as much as they did. And let's be honest, folks, you saw some of the women and even the men walking around. I mean, God knows they could use the cardio. I mean, there were tits hanging lower than some of the fruit on trees here in the Garden State for both men and women. But again, don't let that sort of go by the wayside. But regardless, folks, what we got to see over the weekend were children having meltdowns and little rants and hissy fits about, oh my God, what we're living in the United States right now is under the authoritarianism and dictatorship of a king. No, folks, I'm going to tell you what authoritarianism looks like. I'm going to tell you what dictatorship and, overwhelming government control looks like. Just as a reminder to everybody. And I'm going to make this very clear to everyone. So for anyone that was protesting and, obviously in attending one of these protests that, I listen, if you stood up to tyrannical governors when we were locked in our homes, or kept children out of school longer than they should have, or trapped parents in nursing homes and hospitals to die alone, or for example, if any of you were questioning who's in control of the government during the Biden administration, if you were doing these things, cool, I'll take you seriously. But the fact is that a lot of you didn't do that. A lot of you Karens and cat ladies and feminists and woke fools and social justice clowns were as quiet as Citi Field is every October during the Major League Baseball postseason. So if you want me to take you seriously about no kings, then I hope that, why didn't you come with that same energy these last 5 years? When Democrat governors and a Democrat administration in Washington was telling you, hey, if you don't get vaccinated, you'll lose your job. where a Democrat administration and Democrat governors are telling you, hey, if you don't get vaccinated, guess what? You may not be able to go to school. You might be denied registration. Right? Where was that energy, right? Like, you're all about fighting back against dictatorship and authoritarianism. Where was that energy 5 years ago? During the height of the scamdemic, when, again, we saw how red state governors governed better during the scamdemic than the blue state ones did. Don't believe me? We're here in New Jersey. Did Phil Murphy have to keep the state shut down longer than it should have been? Of course not. Did he hurt businesses infinitely? Yes, he did. Did he keep our kids locked at home a lot longer than they should have been? Yeah, because he chose to listen to the NJEA and the AFT, right? A bunch of like know-nothing lesbians running these organizations. Somehow, they know better than you do. Where was that energy, folks? Where was that energy for all the guys and girls? And folks, and this is the awful thing. It's parents bringing their children and indoctrinating them into this buffoonery. It's bad enough you grew up to be a Karen and a cat lady and everything else, and a beta male and a soy boy, but now you're trying to indoctrinate your kids into that. Why weren't you like bitching and moaning the last 5 years? Again, folks, I know police officers in New York City. I know EMT workers. I actually know soldiers who were relieved of duty for refusing to take a vaccine that, as we have come to learn, folks, obviously, not really giving it to us on up and up. No, I'm not vaccinated, but I know what it's like to be vilified for it. I remember when former Hoboken Councilman Mike DeFusco was saying, well, you know what? If you want to dine in Hoboken, you should have a vaccine card. And I remember specifically reaching out to Mikey DeFusco, who already didn't like me because, again, you know, as you know about my views about the endless alphabet mob and his catering to that, obviously, since he's a member of that community. So he already didn't like me. So he thought that, me objecting to his draconian measures were just, that's just another example of Fernando Uribe being a homophobe or a transphobe or a bigot. No, folks, I'm none of those things. But I remember reaching out to Councilman at the time DeFusco in Hoboken saying, how dare you want to do that? You want to talk about democracy and how, oh my goodness, how, the horrors of the Trump administration during the first term, but you're okay mandating vaccine cards for people to dine. Like, who the F are you, bro? And I said that to him. And to this day, when I run into him, and we still don't even look at each other. Where was that energy 5 years ago? Well, let me give you some more examples here. Okay? Just to put this in perspective here. Let me see. Of course, for the left and for Democrats and for the woke fools and the climate hysterics, yeah, it's okay to dictate to you what type of car you should be driving in the future. We all know the disasters that electric cars have been, especially in California. Oh, okay. Where was that energy when Democrat governors and even this, the previous administration was forcing your kids to wear masks longer than they had to, hurting their cognitive ability, contributing to learning loss, or banning you from attending church or religious service, right? Or infringing upon parental rights, right? Or leaving the border wide open. Where was your energy? As I was filming over the weekend, I was asking people, hey, what was that energy 5 years ago? And you could tell by some of the men and women walking, it was the most cardio that they had probably done all year. So as they were gasping for air, trying to even answer me or ignoring me, maybe you wonder, again, where was that energy? Since you're all about fighting, the king, what kings? Where was that energy? What was that outrage? Oh, I get it. You know what the left is really good at, folks, in New Jersey? Manufactured outrage. And you saw that this weekend. Whether it was in Weehawken, Morristown, Asbury Park, Jersey City. Take your pick, folks. There was no shortage of virtue signalers, and especially the worst types, right? Like white liberal women with like gender studies degrees. Those are the worst. They want to lecture you as if they know more than you do. They don't know shit. They never have and they never will. Okay? What exactly are you complaining about? The cost of food? Folks, if you saw these parades over the weekend and these rallies, believe me, if there's anyone that knows about the cost of food, it's these men and women during these walks. Okay? If anyone knows about the cost of eggs, it's these people. Okay? But again, Groceries have been down. Inflation is at its lowest in 4 years. Crude oil production has been on the rise, and therefore, guess what? The cost of a gallon of regular gas has gone down dramatically. When was the last time, you remember, folks, during Father's Day weekend, in the middle of June, essentially in the summer, it doesn't feel like it here in New Jersey. It feels like we're living in that shithole, Seattle, Washington, with all this rain, or the Pacific Northwest. When was the last time you saw a gallon of regular gas a little over $2? I don't remember that. But of course, you're in New Jersey because of the gas tax that was just, again, implemented over the course of a few years. And the last phase kicked in this year on January 1st. Folks, we're paying 49 cents more a gallon because of the gas tax, which, again, supposedly the revenue from the gas tax is supposed to go into the Transportation Trust Fund. What exactly am I supposed to trust with transportation with this fund when AAA ranks New Jersey roads in the bottom third in the nation? So what exactly is the gas tax going towards? Can someone explain that to me? Stock market's doing really, really well, folks. By the way, I don't know if you noticed, more manufacturing jobs are returning to the United States. So what exactly this past weekend did all these Karens and cat ladies and beta males and soy boys, what exactly were they complaining about? What king? What was that energy once again in the last 5 years? And I'll sort of just give you even a better example here. Okay? Here's a great meme that I saw. Imagine throwing a No King's Day protest after your party refused to hold a primary, anointed the queen of word salads, the walking drunk, Miss Boozer, Kamala Harris, without a single vote, and attempted to remove Trump from state ballots only after your illegal lawfare scheme eventually failed. Explain to me the level of hypocrisy that this conveys. Are you that politically myopic, folks? I know you're not. You're a smart audience, which is why you watch this show. But that's what we were witnessing over the weekend. Again, I cannot stress this enough. If anyone attending a No Kings protest, number one, stood up to tyrannical governors when they locked us in our homes, kept our children out of schools, and trapped our parents in nursing homes and hospitals to die alone. And we saw that, okay? Or number two, questioned who was in control of the government during the Biden administration when we know conclusively that Sleepy Joe was asleep at the helm and that a committee was running this government, okay? If any of you had energy for this, I might take you seriously. But here's the spoiler. I'm not going to, because we all know you don't have that energy. And it showed over the weekend, where there was tons of people holding 86.47 cents. And folks, we've all come to learn what that means. Where people are more concerned about coddling illegals or mentally ill people, trans people, people that think they can play dress up and make believe. And somehow we're supposed to accept this level of delusion. Because regardless of whatever surgeries or hormones you want to infuse, folks, someone like me, I have XY chromosomes. I'm going to have that until the day I die. Okay? No amount of dress up, no amount of make believe is going to make a man a woman. You don't have a uterus, you don't have ovaries, and you don't have a vagina. So no amount of, delusional behavior is going to tell us, okay, about what's acceptable and what's not. But that's what you saw over the weekend. You saw individuals trying to fool you into believing that they care about illegals. They don't. You know what they care about? They care about making sure that in a lot of blue states, when it comes to the census, that we count illegals. Why? Electoral votes, folks. That's what the left cares about. They don't care about illegals and brown people and immigrants. They don't care. They care about electoral votes. Folks, don't get it twisted. But again, over the weekend, what we saw were children, not adults. And in Weehawken, there's more than enough children around. Okay, we got a specific family in Weehawken that acts like children. Okay? We got people marching in Weehawken over the weekend, somehow trying to tell you that they know better than you do. Folks, they don't. They just don't. And I'll tell you what I know. And what I learned over the weekend is when the left wants to weaponize something, whether it's a wife beater, human trafficker like Gilberto Garcia, well, they'll move on to the next virtue signaling. And of course, trying to make you believe that we're living in the days of a king. No, we fought that almost 250 years ago, and we defeated it. So on June the 14th, you should have been honoring the U.S. Army. You should have been honoring the flag of the United States of America, not honoring virtue signaling. That's what you chose to do. And that's why, for a lot of people, especially in Weehawken, let's say one family in particular who loves to virtue signal, yeah, I don't have any use for you. Or the others in Jersey City or throughout New Jersey. We got to learn a lot about what you guys are useful for. And the reality is, you're not useful for anything. You're actually quite useless. And we saw that in full effect. Don't believe me? You can check out the videos there. Don't take my word for it. The eyes never lie, and neither do I. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. Moving on to local news, and certainly, folks, primary day has come and gone in New Jersey. And it was certainly a very contentious one, to say the least. There are a lot of competitive assembly races throughout the state of New Jersey, all the way down south in the 2nd Legislative District, all the way up to the 40th Legislative District. But up here in Hudson County, folks, in northern Hudson County, certainly the 33rd Legislative District was front and center with Brian Stack's assembly candidates of the incumbent Assemblyman Gabriel Rodriguez and local businessman Larry Weinstein taking on Nick Sacco's contingency of slumlord Tony Hector and the guy who's essentially asleep at the wheel every minute of the day, Frank Alonso, here in Union City. And of course, they were led by gubernatorial candidate Stephen Fulop, the mayor of Jersey City, as well as the incumbent sheriff, Frank Scolari. And on the other side, of course, you had Bayonne Mayor Jimmy Davis campaigning to be the next sheriff in Hudson County, at least the Democrat nominee for sheriff. And certainly, Mayor and State Senator Brian Stack was supporting U.S. Representative Rebecca Michelle Sherrill, otherwise known as Representative Mikey Sherrill, out of the 11th Congressional District. Well, folks, we thought it was going to be a pretty hotly contested primary here in Hudson County. That wasn't the case. After spending millions upon millions of dollars and nearly 2 years at it, Jersey Mayor Stephen Fulop finished third behind Sherrill and Newark Mayor Ross Baraka. Of course, I was there at the Beer Garden in Jersey City when we were looking at vote totals. The watch party went from a very festive atmosphere early in the evening to a very somber one after, really, 10 o'clock Eastern time. When really Sherrill won the vote pretty decisively, as well as incumbent Assemblyman Gabriel Rodriguez, along with Larry Weinstein and Jimmy Davis. Subsequently, also in the 31st Legislative District, more on that a little bit later, incumbent Assemblyman William Sampson was able to win re-election as the Democrat nominee, and Hudson County Commissioner Jerry Walker also won the primary. Unfortunately, in the 32nd Legislative District, the most progressive district in the state, all the Karens and cat ladies and virtue singlers and woke fools and social justice clowns came out in big numbers to support Katie Brennan and Mr. Progressive himself, Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bala. Subsequently, with such a strong Democrat representation in the 32nd Legislative District, it's all but certain that Ravi Bala and Katie Brennan will be your next assemblyman and assemblywomen out of the 32nd Legislative District. So if you're the Hudson County Democrat organization, you should be pretty happy. You won 4 of the 6 assembly seats on the ballot, as well as defeating Frank Scolari, the current sheriff, and basically a Nick Sacco puppet on election night. Folks, what we saw last week was literally the last days of the Nick Sacco political empire and the Nick Sacco political machine. Now, it remains to be seen what happens in the town of North Bergen. There'll be a power struggle with Anthony Veneri, Julio Marenco, and Hugo Cabrera. And we'll let that play itself out. We'll see. But without a doubt, if you're looking at some winners and losers from primary day here in Hudson County, well, folks, without question, it's certainly Brian Stack, Hudson County Executive and Hudson County Democrat Chairman Craig Guy, along with their candidates. Certainly, some of the biggest losers were Stephen Fulop, Tony Hector, Frank Alonzo, Frank Scolari, and of course the entire North Bergen political apparatus. And you saw that with all the local malcontents, right? Take your pick, folks. Of course, former Union City police officer and former, assistant chief Joe Blaitler, who decided to enter the political arena as an operative and a campaign manager for Tony Hector and Frank Alonzo. Well, that went about as beautifully as you would expect with someone like Joe Blaitler, which we all came to learn, folks, on election night. Well, you can't spell Blaitler without an L. Of course, you had the other local malcontents in northern Hudson County, of course. Useless retirees like Ernie Rivera-Batiz, all 5'2" of him, of course, who talks a good game online, but let's be honest, and has never met a spell check app that he's never liked. Or Jose Garrido, another local child who spends his time at home while God knows how he's living, but he's always crying poverty, by the way, and never fails to take shots at yours truly, or Brian Stack, or all of the hardworking men and women at 3715 Palisade Avenue in the city of Union City. Sure, the guy can, record incoherent, ramblings on video. But we'll talk about other people that don't get traffic. Well, that's just not true. Or endorsing propagandists and wannabe journalists like Leonard Filipowski, who, again, you would think, folks, after receiving $10,000 from Tony Hector, because we saw that in the ELEC report, we think Leonard Filipowski would find his way to a computer and just apply for legitimate press credentials. No, Leonard, showing up with a copy of the Constitution just saying, oh, well, it's freedom of the press, that's my press credential. No, it doesn't work that way, Leonard. Just like anything else, there's structure. There's something called decorum. You have to have that. I know you lack it. So whether you enter a federal building or enter any other school, you need some sort of ID. And if you're going to enter in the capacity of a journalist, well, there's two governing bodies in New Jersey, the New Jersey Press Association and the New Jersey Society of Professional Journalists. These are the governing bodies and institutions that bestow press credentials. I happen to have one. And once you show your justification and, of course, any necessary documentation, yes, for a small fee of $55 a year, you can renew your credentials, Leonard. I do. Now, I know some of my peers in the field in New Jersey don't think I'm a journalist, but, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm too busy over here looking at my traffic every Monday night on Real Talk via Jersey First TV. But you would think with $10,000 that Leonard would be able to afford press credentials. But we all know he doesn't want that. He'd rather play the victim and harass people. But isn't it funny when he shows up to places and he gets harassed, he cries more than a virgin on prom night. You notice that? You ever notice how he cries more than a chubby girl who figures out, oh man, my prom dress isn't going to fit? Yeah, that's who Leonard Filipowski is. He loves to go ambush you, but the minute you try to ambush him, oh, you can't have that for Leonard Filipowski. Oh, God forbid. But folks, these are the local malcontents who took the biggest L on primary night. Not just Stephen Fulop, not just Frank Scolari, not just Tony Hector and Frank Alonzo. But it's these malcontents in Hudson County who think it's wise to keep, taking shots at people's family. Folks, one thing is going after Brian Stack. You can do that. You're entitled to do that. But do it in a classy way. Going after his family, that's one thing. You have like local malcontents like John Bender, for example. You know, the guy with like lacking teeth in North Bergen. You know, the director of security for the North Bergen Board of Education, earning $100,000 a year, but what is he actually doing? Yeah, one thing is, God forbid you say anything against the Sacco political machine or the Sacco empire. Yeah, you'll have John Bender, going after you on social media. Well, John Bender has been more than cavalier with his little shots at me, which is cool. Like, for example, changing his profile picture to now have my face on there. Well, folks, if you know anything about John Bender and his recent profile picture, which was taken in 1971, well, we all know that's pretty deceitful. When you look at John Bender now, oofa, probably the least photogenic person I've ever seen. But again, as I've talked about on Real Talk, which you can catch every Monday night, by the way, on Jersey First TV, it's the end of the school year. So shouldn't we be honoring or paying appreciation to a lot of our senior employees in our school districts? So for everyone in North Bergen, why don't you do this? Why don't you go to CVS.com or Walgreens.com and make sure that you give John Bender a sufficient supply of Polygrip to make sure that, hey, as the school year comes to an end, after all the hard work you've put in this year, yeah, right, you know what? Let's reward him with making sure that he has no shortage of Polygrip for the summer until school resumes in September. But yes, folks, again, these are the people rallying behind the Sacco political machine and the Sacco empire. As we came to learn last week, folks, that is slowly withering, if not on life support. Don't believe me? Check out the vote totals. It'll tell you where the stranglehold that Nick Sacco once had in Hudson County, that's not happening anymore. And you know what? Good riddance. Lastly, as we continue on with more primary day analysis here, and you know what? I have to call him the comeback kid. And that's who Will Sampson is in the 31st Legislative District. A special thank you to Aaron Morrill, the editor-in-chief of the Jersey City Times, for his reporting on the story. As Will Sampson will be returning to Trenton as the assemblyman from the 31st Legislative District after all. He eventually overtook Assemblywoman Barbara McCann-Stamato last week as votes from the primary were continuing to be counted. With all proceeds now reporting, Sampson totaled 7,535 to Stamato's 7,341. Now, Sampson's win gives a lift once again to the Hudson County Democratic Party, which endorsed Sampson. Now, Sampson, through a statement from HCDO Director Storm Weiss, said, quote, voters recognize the stark contrast between candidates and made their decision. Assemblyman Sampson has a strong record of working to deliver education funding for district residents and fighting to make sure families receive their fair share. His hard work and dedication to public service ultimately won the day. Without a doubt, folks, a lot of people were counting Will Sampson out in this race. I didn't. I actually called that race, along with Jerry Walker. So, obviously, with a district that's overwhelmingly Democrat, it's all but certain that Jerry Walker and Will Sampson will get reelected this November in the 31st Legislative District. So, again, another L for the Stephen Fulop campaign during this election cycle. And that's our show for this week. Once again, folks, to check out all of the great content brought to you by the leader in independent media right here in Hudson County, the Hudson Media Group, please check out their page on Facebook. And make sure, of course, to like, comment, and share, as well as subscribe to their page on YouTube. All our great content is there featured, and of course, it includes Hudson County View Live every Wednesday, hosted by John R. Highness, Stick at Night, hosted by Hudson County Commissioner Anthony Romano, of course, all the great stuff going on in the town of North Bergen with Greta Hernandez, and much more. Folks, again, I can't say enough as we, again, continue with 5 years plus here with the Hudson Media Group, how proud I am to be working with this great news organization. It starts with the executive producer and CEO, Patrick O'Melia, and of course, all the great staff that I have the privilege of working with every single week. And folks, that's our last show for this season. We'll come back in the fall. Again, enjoy the summer. Check out the replays, and of course, make sure you support us online, like us on Facebook, of course, follow us on Instagram and X, and tell everyone you know how much you enjoy the Hudson Media Group. And always remember, folks, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's Talking Politics with Fernando Uribe right here with the Hudson Media Group. I am indeed the generational talent in Garden State media, and certainly, folks, as the establishment media here in New Jersey continues to lie to you every single day, because that's all they are, is blatantly dishonest, guess what? I'm the hero you need right now, Fernando Uribe, because guess what? I'll never lie to you, not ever. Folks, thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the summer, and we'll see you back in September.